Encanto is a 2021 American computer-animated musical fantasy comedy film produced by Walt Disney Animation Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. The 60th film produced by the studio, it was directed by Jared Bush and Byron Howard, co-directed by Cherise Castro-Smith, who co-wrote the screenplay with Bush, and produced by Yvette Marino and Clark Spencer, with original songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda. The film stars the voices of Stephanie Beatriz, Maria Cecilia Botero, John Leguizamo, Mauro Castillo, Jessica Darrow, Angie Cepeda, Carolina Gayton, Diane Guerrero, and Wilmer Valderrama. Encanto follows a multi-generational Colombian family, the Madrigals, led by a matriarch whose children and grandchildren except for Mirabel Madrigal receive magical gifts from a miracle that helps them serve the people in their rural community called the Encanto. When Mirabel learns that the family is losing their magic, she sets out to find out what is happening, and save her family and their magical house. Encanto premiered at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles on November 3, 2021, and was released in the United States on November 24 over a 30-day theatrical run. It was also released in 3D, 2D, and D-Box formats. It grossed over $256 million worldwide against a $121.50 million budget, and achieved wider commercial success when released onto Disney and on December 24, 2021. Its soundtrack went viral and reached number 1 on the US Billboard 200 and UK compilation albums charts. We Don't Talk About Bruno and Surface Pressure were its two most successful songs, with the former topping both the US Billboard Hot 100 and UK Singles chart for multiple weeks. Upon release, Encanto received critical acclaim for its characterization, music, animation, voice acting, emotional depth, and cultural fidelity. Reviews named magic realism and transgenerational trauma as the film's core concepts. Publications have described Encanto as a cultural phenomenon. The film was nominated for 3 awards at the 94th Academy Awards, winning Best Animated Feature, and received numerous other accolades. Plot: an armed conflict forces Pedro and Alma Madrigal, a young married couple, to flee their home village in Colombia with their infant triplets Yulita, Pepa, and Bruno. The attackers kill Pedro, but the candle of Alma magically repels the attackers and creates Casita, a sentient house for the family located in Encanto, a magical realm, bordered by high mountains. 50 years later, a new village thrives under the candle's protection, and its magic grants gifts to each Madrigal descendant at the age of 5 which they use to serve the villagers. However, Bruno, vilified and scapegoated for his gift of seeing the future, disappeared 10 years earlier, while Yulita's youngest daughter, 15-year-old Mirabel, had mysteriously received no gift. On the evening when 5-year-old Antonio gains the ability to communicate with animals, Mirabel suddenly sees Casita cracking and the candle's flame flickering, but her warnings go unheeded when Casita appears undamaged to the others. After overhearing Alma praying, Mirabel resolves to save the miracle's magic. The next day, she talks to her super-strong older sister Luisa, who confesses to feeling overwhelmed by her near-constant obligations, then suggests that Bruno's room, in a forbidden tower in Casita, may explain the phenomenon. There, Mirabel discovers a cave and barely escapes it with some pieces of a slab of opaque emerald glass in hand. Outside, Luisa discovers that her gift is weakening. After her family reminds her why Bruno is vilified, Mirabel reassembles the glass and sees a picture of herself with Casita cracking behind her. Later that evening, Mirabel's oldest sister Isabella, who can make plants and flowers grow at will, is scheduled to become engaged to neighbor Mariano Guzman. Amidst Mariano's proposal and an awkward dinner, Dolores, who possesses superhuman hearing, reveals Mirabel's discovery to everyone, causing Casita to crack again, ruining the night and Mariano's proposal when the weather-controlling Pipa inadvertently conjures a downpour. Amidst the chaos, Mirabelle follows a group of rats and discovers a secret passage behind a portrait where she finds Bruno is hiding. Bruno reveals he never left the house, and that the vision changes between Mirabelle saving and cracking the casita, making him believe that she is the key to the casita magic. Refusing to let Mirabelle get hurt, he broke the vision and disappeared. In Antonio's room, Bruno reluctantly conjures another vision that resembles the previous one, along with Mirabelle embracing Isabella and strengthening the candle. Mirabelle reluctantly apologizes to Isabella, who abruptly confesses that she does not want to marry Mariano and is burdened by her image of perfection. Mirabelle helps Isabella develop her powers and the two embrace, but Alma sees the pair and accuses Mirabelle of causing the family's misfortunes out of spite for not having a gift. Mirabelle finally snaps at Alma for deeming her not good enough for the family, blaming her overbearing nature for weakening the family's magic. This argument creates a fissure that splits the nearby mountain and demolishes Casita as the candle extinguishes, leaving the madrigals powerless. A devastated Mirabelle runs away from the family, who scramble to find her. Several hours later, Alma finds a tearful Mirabelle back at the river where Pedro died and explains her tragic backstory and how, determined to preserve the magic, she ignored how her expectations were harming the family and finally accepts responsibility for what happened. Mirabelle and Alma reconcile and the two, with Bruno in tow, assemble the madrigals to rebuild Casita with the townsfolk joining in. Mirabelle installs a new doorknob to the main door, restoring the family's gifts and reviving Casita. She and Bruno join the family for another photo. Voice cast: Stephanie Beatriz as Mirabelle Madrigal, the 15-year-old protagonist who, unlike her family, does not have a special gift. Director Jared Bush described her as imperfect and weird and quirky, but also deeply emotional and incredibly empathetic. Noemi Josefina Flores voices a 5-year-old Mirabelle. Maria Cecilia Botero as Abuela Alma Madrigal, Mirabelle's 75-year-old grandmother and the family matriarch. Her full name is not given in the film. Olga Mirdiz provides Alma's singing voice. Botero reprises her role in the Spanish dub of the film, while Yanith Waldman provides her singing voice in said version. John Leguizamo as Bruno Madrigal, Mirabelle's 50-year-old ostracized uncle who has the ability to see the future. Mauro Castillo as Felix Madrigal, Mirabelle's uncle and Pipa's husband. Bush stated that Felix is just there to have a good time. Castillo reprises his role in the Spanish dub of the film. Jessica Darrow as Luisa Madrigal, Mirabelle's second oldest sister, who is 19, has superhuman strength, and is the tallest of the family. CO writer Cherise Castro-Smith described Luisa as someone who all the burdens and never. Ng Cepeda as Yulita Madrigal, Mirabelle's 50-year-old mother and Augustine's wife who can heal people with her cooking. Cepeda reprises her role in the Spanish and Italian dubs of the film. Carolina Gayton as Pipa Madrigal, Mirabelle's 50-year-old aunt and Felix's wife whose mood controls the weather. She often creates rain and storms due to her strong emotions. Gayton reprises her role in the Spanish dub of the film. Diane Guerrero as Isabella Madrigal, Mirabelle's oldest sister, who is 21 and can make flowers bloom anywhere. Director Byron Howard described her as perfect and a success. Wilmer Valderrama as Augustine Madrigal, Mirabelle's father and Yulita's husband, who Bush described as accident-prone. Renzi Feliz as Camilo Madrigal, Pipa and Felix's 15-year-old son, Dolores, and Antonio's brother, and Mirabelle's cousin who can shapeshift. Castro-Smith stated that Camilo is someone who doesn't quite know who they are yet. Ravi Cabot-Conyers as Antonio Madrigal, Pipa and Felix's 5-year-old son, Dolores, and Camilo's brother, and Mirabelle's cousin who gained the ability to talk to and understand the animals. He looks up to Mirabelle and considers her a big sister. Odessa as Dolores Madrigal, Pepa and Felix's 21-year-old daughter, Camilo, and Antonio's sister, and Mirabel's cousin, who has super hearing. Maluma as Mariano Guzman, Isabella's fiancé, and the Madrigal family's neighbor. Maluma reprises his role in the Spanish dub of the film. Additionally, Rose Portillo voices Señora Guzman, Mariano's mother, and the Madrigal family's neighbor, Elisabella Candiani, Noemi Josefina Flores, Paisley Herrera, Brooklyn Skyla Rodriguez, and Ezra Rujolf voice the town kids. Juan Castano voices Osvaldo, a donkey delivery man who Bruno predicted would grow a gut, which came true. Sarah Nicole Robles voices Señora Ozma, a townsperson who once asked Luisa to reroute the river. Hector Elias voices Old Arturo, a townsperson who asks Alma about their fellow townspeople becoming anxious about the fading magic. Alan Tudyk voices Pico, a toucan who Bush described as clueless, and Jorge E. Ruiz Cano voices Tipple Maestro. Production Development. During a November 2016 publicity tour for Moana, Miranda revealed that early stage work had begun on an animated project that John Lasseter, then the chief creative officer of Disney Animation, had presented to him and Howard. Howard and Bush subsequently revealed that after finishing Zootopia, they knew they wanted their next project to be a musical, which turned into a Latin American musical after Miranda came on board. Howard and Bush had already worked on buddy films where two characters go out into the world and learn about each other, and wanted to try something completely different. The three men discussed their common experience of having large extended families, and decided to make a musical film about a large extended family with a dozen main characters. During the 5 years it took to develop the film, Howard and Bush's True North was the theme of perspective, about how you see the other people in your family and how you're seen. They began by brainstorming ideas on a whiteboard. Early on, they made 3 important discoveries about families which became the basis of the film's story. 1. Most of us don't feel truly seen by our families. 2. Most of us carry burdens we never let our families see. And 3. Most of us are oblivious that nearly all of us, especially within our own families, feel the exact same way. 8. In turn, it was Miranda who suggested that the vibrant, broad spectrum of Latin American music could best capture the complexity of family relationships. 8. Early in development, the production team spoke with many therapists and psychologists. All were asked who would be treated best by the parents in a 4-person family. Every answer differed. Bush concluded, "It's about how you perceive yourself in the family." The crew also consulted family members and Disney Animation people. Howard and Bush started to discuss Latin American culture at length with Juan Rendon and Natalie Ozma, who had previously worked with them on the making of documentary Imagining Zootopia. Rendon and Ozma both happened to be from Colombia and repeatedly drew upon their personal experiences with Colombian culture in their discussions, which caused Howard, Bush, and Miranda to focus their research on that country. Rendon and Ozma became the first 2 of several cultural experts hired by Disney Animation as consultants on the film, who collectively formed what Disney called the Colombian Cultural Trust. In 2018, Rendon and Ozma accompanied Howard, Bush, and Miranda on a research trip to Colombia. During their 2 weeks in the country, they met with architects, chefs, and artisans to immerse themselves in the country's culture. They also visited the Gabriel Garcia Marquez Foundation. They visited big cities like Bogotá and Cartagena, but they found inspiration in small towns such as Salantu and Barichara. Bush noticed that every town we went to had a very specific personality, because of how the country's mountainous terrain divides and isolates them. According to Disney fan club publication Disney 23, this isolation became the key to placing the Madrigal's residence in a remote Encanto, that is, a place that's charmed, or spiritually blessed, a domain where magic and reality merge. As Colombian tourist guide Alejandra Espinosa Uribe explained, Colombians are surrounded by sacred lands that feel magical, and we coexist with them, not questioning their existence. 30 In Barichara, they befriended Espinosa Uribe, who showed them around the town, and later hired her to consult on the film's historical and cultural authenticity. Espinosa Uribe was an inspiration for several aspects of the film's protagonist Mirabel, including her curly black hair, large eyeglasses, and gestures. The design of Mirabel's skirt was inspired by traditional skirts woven in the Valles area. The final version of the film is deliberately vague as to the time frame in which it is set, but drew inspiration from early 20th century Colombia. After exploring the 1950s, the directors decided to shift the look of the film to the early 1900s and to use a folkloric Colombian aesthetic. 22 At the beginning of the 20th century, the country endured the Thousand Days' War, which resulted in the populations of entire villages fleeing to save themselves as depicted in the film. Writing. As the film steadily became more complex, with an entire family to develop, multiple songs, and a rich cultural setting with a deep tradition of magical realism, Howard and Bush realized they needed a second screenwriter to help write the screenplay. They selected Cherise Castro-Smith for her strong background in magical realism and experience with handling real-world family dynamics. Bush described her as a godsend, as she provided a foundation of heart, vulnerability, and authenticity. Castro-Smith sought to create a distinct, imperfect, and completely human character in Mirabel, one that spoke to the lives of many Latinos while also being relatable to viewers globally. From working on Moana, Miranda knew that film's protagonist, Moana, originally had 8 brothers before they were removed to streamline the film's plot. As Miranda had expected from that experience, Disney Animation initially resisted moving forward with a dozen main characters for Encanto. Miranda deliberately wrote the film's opening number, The Family Madrigal, to prove to Disney Animation that it was possible to efficiently introduce such a large family and its internal dynamics to the audience. Because of the film's 90-minute runtime, the filmmakers struggled to make the center family feel genuine, fleshed out, and human, and to give them arcs. The crew worked hard to develop Encanto upon instantly identifiable family archetypes. The team focused on pushing past the archetypes and showing that family members are more complicated than the masks imposed on them. Each member of the Madrigal family is inspired by a common family archetype if it were exaggerated and made magical. For example, Isabella and Luisa are based on that of the Golden Child and Rock, respectively. Bush explained that this method prevented each gift from feeling arbitrary, instead being prescribed by emotions and personality. 26 Like most Disney animation films, Encanto went through many different versions in its development, as various story ideas were explored and discarded. 17 The ideas discarded along the way include: a young modern-day woman is transported by a magical doorknob to another world. 17 Augustine was the family patriarch who discovered Encanto and personally built Casita there. 17 The film would have been expressly set in the 1950s and featured cosmopolitan and modern fashions. 22 As well as motor vehicles and a trip to the big city where Alma had originally come from. 146 Casita was an extension of only Alma's personality, rather than the entire family. 41 The film would have followed the story of multiple generations and Casita over a 100-year time span. 49 Mirabel was desperately trying to find her magical gift, rather than merely expressing frustration with not being granted one. 71 The colors of Mirabel's world as seen from her perspective would have reflected her emotional state as she narrated the first 2 acts, and then changed over to more realistic colors when the film shifted to Alma's point of view in the 3rd act. 76 Luisa's room would have been made out of stone and appeared boring to reflect her sense of responsibility, but would have concealed a secret exit to a hidden room similar to a theme park where she could have fun. 94 And Isabella at one point had a dorky suitor named Bubo who came from the big city. 153 After the film's release, Bush revealed via Twitter several more ideas which had been discussed and set aside. Alma gave birth to the triplets at the river. At the moment of Pedro's death, Isabella and Mirabel's mutual hostility culminated in a fist fight, and Mirabel celebrated her quinceañera. According to Howard, as the plot evolved over several years, the core of the whole film was always the relationship between Mirabel and Alma. 116. Casting. Disney cast several actors with Colombian heritage, including Stephanie Beatriz, whose father is Colombian, John Leguizamo, who was born in Bogotá, and Wilmer Valderrama, who spent his childhood in Colombia, where his mother is from. Though no obvious roles which he could voice existed, due to the Madrigal's Colombian nationality and Mirabel's lack of an animal sidekick, Alan Tudyk considered Disney's good luck charm makes a cameo as Pico, a toucan. When he first came into the recording studio, Tudyk informed the crew that their scratch vocals for Pico were not actually those of toucans, but instead were parrots. He spent many hours doing imitations of various toucans. The team would speak to him in English, and Tudyk would respond using toucan noises. Design. Encanto was the hardest film to date for heads of animation Renato dos Anjos and Kirill Atomaki because they were asked to fully develop a dozen characters, as opposed to other animated films which primarily feature 2 or 3 characters out of a large cast. Accordingly, the characters required a degree of complexity that Disney Animation had previously never achieved. Journalist Edna Liliana Valencia Murillo was the Afro-Caribbean consultant and contributed greatly towards Felix, Dolores, and Antonio's designs. According to Howard, certain characters' Afro-Latin hairstyles were essential. Nasa and Lorelei Bove, the costume design lead and associate production designer respectively, hoped to represent the film's various communities well. Nasa requested Colombian consultants, which included an anthropologist and botanist. Instead of fabrics similar to neoprene that are often depicted in films, the characters' costumes are generally loose. The clothes are meant to appear as though they are from Colombia. The designers emphasized embroidery, texture, and movement. Each costume except Isabella's is asymmetric, with a handmade feeling. In Encanto, personalities and family ties are represented through color. For example, Pepa and Felix's side of the family wear warm tones of orange, yellow, and red in homage to his Caribbean ancestry. 29. By contrast, Yulita and Augustine's side wear cool tones of blues, purples, and greens. Alma sits in the middle, with darker hues, such as purple, black, and brown. 29. Each madrigal has a symbol on their clothing that denotes their gift, such as barbells on Luisa's skirt and Pepa's sun earrings. Due to her lack of a gift, Mirabel has symbols of the other family members' gifts embroidered across her skirt, in addition to her face and name. The residents of the Encanto dress in neutral tones, thus, the main family are distinguished by their vivid colors. 29. They needed to be distinctive while not standing out, which visual development artist Jin Kim said occasionally made them harder to design than the main cast. 148. Disney used simple silhouettes for the villagers' clothes to make them seem and feel similar to typical residents from the Colombian coffee region. They incorporated depictions of the sombrero vulciao from the Zanu indigenous community and the sombrero aguadano from the Aguadas community. 149. Animation. The animators were challenged by the directors to make Mirabel distinctively different from all prior Disney heroines. She had to be both capable and imperfect, but not merely just clumsy. The casita was inspired not only by traditional Colombian homes but films in which houses come alive, especially Beetlejuice. The production team learned in their research that music, dance, and rhythm are core elements of everyday life in Colombia. As a result, Encanto was the first Disney animation film to have choreographers involved in the development process from start to finish. meaning they worked closely with the production team to develop songs, characters, and story. This is in contrast to older films where the story was already in place by the time a choreographer was hired to consult on specific scenes. For Encanto, Disney Animation initially hired African-American choreographer Jamal Sims, who insisted on immediately hiring Colombian-American dancer Kai Martinez as the film's animation reference consultant. They worked together with a team of dancers to prepare choreography reference footage for each scene, and then gave feedback to the animators on scenes as they were animated. They developed different dance styles for different characters. Luisa's style is reggaeton, while Mirabel's style is Cali salsa. For selection and animation of the plants and flowers that Isabella could make grow, the production team consulted with Colombian botanist Felipe Zapata. His advice allowed appropriate plants to be selected and then shown in accurate detail. The river of jacarandas and strangler figs and the cascade of sundew that Isabella produces are all based on this input. Plants in the background scenery are also realistic. These included the iconic, but now vulnerable wax palm and dramatic cecropia trees. Economically important plants, like coffee, also appeared. Over 800 people, 108 of them animators, were involved in the production of Encanto. Disney Animation was planning to send many of its animators to Colombia starting on March 15, 2020, in preparation for the film's transition from development to production. This second research trip had to be cancelled after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. The studio's animators ended up having to work remotely with the Colombian Cultural Trust. For example, Espinosa Uribe gave the animators a virtual tour of Colombia with the help of her cell phone. Diane Guerrero sent the studio's designers photographs of Colombian food taken by her relatives in Colombia. On June 22, 2020, Miranda confirmed on Good Morning America that he and Bush were working on an animated Disney film set in Colombia, with Bush and Byron Howard directing, and Charisse Castro-Smith co-directing. On June 18, 2020, the tentative title was revealed to be Encanto. The project was also confirmed to be the film Miranda was involved in, and it was reported to be about a girl in a magical family. On December 10, 2020, the project was officially confirmed at a Disney Investor Day meeting, where a clip was shown, a fall 2021 release was announced, and magical realism was referenced. According to Bush, development of the film's script wrapped in August 2021, and production on the film wrapped a month later. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many crew members worked together remotely for over a year and did not meet each other in person until Disney put on a socially distanced outdoor screening of the final version of the film. Cinematography. Encanto is the first Disney animation film since Tangled to employ a tall frame, a decision made to get closer to the characters. This layout was supplemented by romanticism lighting, 168 according to Howard. Romantic is the film's keyword in terms of the approach towards cinematography and lighting. The latter was also inspired by magic realism, due to the genre's heavy influence on the writing and characters. The directors aimed to use the film's optics to portray strong emotions. Alessandro Giacomini and Daniel Rice, directors of cinematography, lighting, stated this use would amplify, exaggerate, and distort perception, which is very in line with Mirabel's point of view as a narrator. Her feelings of being left out were also shown using emotive lighting. The directors frequently reminded the crew of the emotional subtext of every scene as well as the intricacies of the individual parts. That subtext was applied by Warner, Giacomini, and Rice in elaborate sequences, such as the song Surface Pressure. 168. Soundtrack. In June 2020, Miranda publicly revealed that he had begun to write the film's music, which would have 8 original songs in both Spanish and English. After the film's premiere, he disclosed that he had been writing songs for the film from the very beginning. On September 8, 2021, Jermaine Franco, composer of the songs for Coco, began to score the film. Encanto was released on November 19, 2021. A huge commercial success alike the film, the soundtrack reached number 1 on the US Billboard 200, becoming the first Disney soundtrack since that of Frozen 2 to top the chart. The track We Don't Talk About Bruno was a viral sensation. It broke various records and became one of Disney's most successful songs of all time. It topped the US Billboard Hot 100 and the UK Singles Chart, and marked Disney's first number 1 song on the former in the 21st century and its first ever on the latter. Encanto is the first Disney film to have produced a number 1 song and a number 1 album. Release. Marketing. The first look of the film was shown on December 10, 2020, during Disney's Investor Day. The teaser trailer was released on July 8, 2021, which garnered acclaim from internet users due to Luisa's physical appearance, especially her muscles. She was dubbed the Buff Lady. The official trailer was released on September 29, 2021. For its opening weekend at the box office, Disney spent $14 million on television advertisements to promote the film, generating 1.26 billion impressions. Deadline Hollywood said the marketing failed to distinguish the film from other Disney properties, causing audience members to believe that it would be similar to Coco. Film was critical of Disney's merchandising, most of which featured Mirabel and Isabella. Many members of the Madrigal family could only be bought in more costly merchandise of the entire family. Since Isabella is considered the perfect and beautiful sister, the website stated the merchandise reinforces the idea that beauty is the most effective marketing tactic for young girls. Theatrical. Disney held the film's world premiere at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles on November 3, 2021, and also held a Colombia premiere at the Teatro Colón in Bogotá, Colombia on November 23, 2021. The film was theatrically released in the United States on November 24. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, it had an exclusive 30-day theatrical run before being released on Disney and on December 24. The film was paired with the short film Far From the Tree. Encanto was released in China on January 7, 2022. On February 16, 2022, the film was re-released in cinemas after its success on Disney and an Academy Award nominations. Home media. Encanto was released on Disney and on December 24, 2021, and was released by Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment on DVD, Blu-ray, and Ultra HD Blu-ray on February 8, 2022. Bonus features include Let's Talk About Bruno, Our Casita, Journey to Colombia, Familia Lo Es Todo, A Journey Through Music, and a sing-along version of the movie. Far From the Tree was also released alongside the film on streaming on physical media. Since its Disney and release, Encanto has consistently topped Nielsen's weekly streaming chart, most recently with 1.224 billion total minutes of viewing. Reception. Box office. Encanto grossed $96.1 million in the United States and Canada, and $160.4 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $256.5 million. Encanto was 2021's highest-grossing animated film before it was surpassed by Sing 2. Factoring in both the film's production budget and marketing expenses, along with the theater's share of revenues, Encanto was estimated to need to gross at least $300 million worldwide to break even. Nevertheless, the film went viral over the 2021 holiday season and achieved wider commercial success after its digital release to Disney and on December 24, 2021. In the United States and Canada, it was released alongside House of Gucci and Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, and originally projected to gross $35.40 million from 3,980 theaters in its 5-day opening weekend. It opened nationwide on Wednesday, November 24, 2021, and made $7.5 million on its first day, including $1.5 million from Tuesday night previews. It went on to make $40.6 million in its first 5 days. Of the 3.7 million moviegoers who saw it, 52% were Latino and Hispanic, 51% were families, and 62% were female. Though its 5-day opening gross was lower than Pixar's The Good Dinosaur, which failed at the box office in 2015, Encanto had the best opening weekend for an animated film during the COVID-19 pandemic. In its second weekend, it made $13.1 million, less than the second weekend results of The Good Dinosaur and Tangled but higher than The Princess and the Frog. It went on to finish in second place in its third and fourth weekends, earning $10 million and $6.5 million respectively. In its fifth weekend, it made $1.8 million and dropped to ninth place at the box office. In its sixth weekend, it finished in 10th place with $1.08 million. It dropped out of the box office top 10 in its seventh weekend, finishing 11th with $613,501. Outside of the US and Canada, it made $29.3 million from 47 markets in its opening weekend. The top countries in its first 5 days were France, Colombia, the United Kingdom, Korea, and Italy. It earned $20.7 million in its second weekend and $13.6 million in its third. In its fourth weekend, it became Colombia's second highest grossing animated film of all time. In its fifth weekend, it crossed the $100 million mark outside the US and Canada. It earned $3.5 million in its sixth weekend, $5.8 million in its seventh, and $3.6 million in its eighth. As of January 9, 2022, its largest markets are France, Colombia, the UK, Spain, and Japan. Critical response. Encanto received widespread critical acclaim. News channel CNBC reported reviewers considered it among Walt Disney Animation's best films. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 91% of 200 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 7.5/10. The website's consensus reads, Encanto's setting and cultural perspective are new for Disney, but the end result is the same enchanting, beautifully animated fun for the whole family. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 75 out of 100 based on 41 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A and to F scale, while those at PostTrack gave it an 88% positive score, with 70% saying they would definitely recommend it. Animation and music. Representation and diversity. Portrayal of family dynamics and emotion. Story. Rankings. Impact and response. The Denver Post journalist John Wenzel wrote, with Encanto alongside other 2021 films like West Side Story and Being the Ricardos, Latino voices are having a moment in U.S. cinema, injecting a diverse set of cultures long ignored by TV, books, movies, video games, stage shows and news media. Pamela Avila, writing for USA Today, underscored that Encanto is Disney's first feature with an all-Latin American cast, capturing the complicated tug and pull between older and younger generations in Hispanic families. Roughly 25% of viewership comes from Hispanic households, while 40% of viewers are between the ages of 2 and 11. Billboard writer Lila Cobo said, following the success of Colombian musicians like Shakira, Maluma, and J Balvin in the U.S., Colombia is finally seen and not just heard via Encanto. Cobo praised the film for not homogenizing all of the Latin American countries in the manner U.S. media has generally been, instead accurately depicting the culture unique to Colombia, from accents to outfits to minute details like the hand-painted tableware, the embroidered dresses, the food, the many colors of our skin, even the animals including the ubiquitous toucan and the yellow butterflies that are synonymous with Garcia Marquez. Johanna Ferreira of Pop Sugar wrote that the success of both Encanto and its soundtrack speaks to not just the importance and significance of this type of representation in animated films, but also how movies like this are really changing how Latinx stories are being told. She stated Encanto celebrates the importance of family and respect for Latin American culture, featuring animated stories about Latinx written by Latinx, with characters voiced by Latinx, and a storyline that actually celebrates Latinx communities rather than stereotype. Mikhail Wood of Los Angeles Times stated Encanto became 2022's first widespread cultural phenomenon, bolstered by its unique direction and music. Far-out journalist Tyler Posen called the effect Encantomania. Various social media trends surrounding Encanto had people posting videos of their children recognizing themselves for perhaps the first time in the movie's characters. Luisa's physical appearance has been praised for representing muscular women, a departure from Disney's conventionally feminine depiction of female protagonists as small and skinny. As of January 23, 2022, the videos tagged with the hashtag #Encanto have collectively amassed more than 11.5 billion views on TikTok. A viral meme in early 2022, "We Don't Talk About Apple Bottom Jeans," received over 31 million views in under 3 months, featuring a dubbed-over version of the song "We Don't Talk About Bruno" and inspiring other parodies of the song. The film's characters and their dynamics have fueled a discourse among mental health specialists, many of whom reported that their clients, especially first-generation children of immigrants, see themselves reflected in the story of Encanto and use the film to communicate about things that otherwise might go unsaid. Mirabel, Isabella, Luisa, Alma, and Bruno have been the most discussed characters, with Bruno being associated with neurodivergent family members. Speaking to CNN, psychotherapist Kadesha Adelakan stated there are so many layers to Encanto, portraying issues many families are going through. Accolades. At the 94th Academy Awards, Encanto received nominations for Best Original Score and Best Original Song, and won Best Animated Feature. The film's other nominations include 9 Annie Awards, a British Academy Film Award, 2 Critics' Choice Movie Awards, and 3 Golden Globe Awards. It also won National Board of Review Award for Best Animated Film.